All right, hi everybody. This is Matt Miller with the product team. We'll go ahead and kick things off. We're just past the hour here. So welcome everybody to the Litera webinar series. The title for today's webinar is Knowledge versus Wisdom, How to Surface Key Data More Quickly. I'm gonna go ahead and advance one slide here and we'll do quick introductions. Just before jumping in with introductions, I will say that if you have questions, we'll take questions at the end. There's a chat box in the GoToWebinar controls. Just type your questions in there. We'll kind of be monitoring that. We'll try to get everything answered with the last 5 to 10 minutes of today's webinar. So I'll start and then hand it over to my colleague Jennifer to do introductions. I am Matt Miller, VP of Product Management for our drafting business unit. Have been with Litera in some form for close to 15 years. So hopefully there's some familiar names and faces on today's call. I'll largely be focusing my content piece around our content companion and create applications. I'll hand it over to Jennifer to do introductions.
Thanks, Matt. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jennifer Tsai. I'm the legal knowledge analyst with Kira, which, as you all know, is now part of the Litera family. I started at a large law firm in New York as a private equity and M&A associate. I joined Kira Systems in 2015. I've had a few different roles here, but eventually transitioned to my current role producing our M&A and contract studies and content relating to them. Thanks.
All right, great. Thanks, Jennifer. So real quick, most likely everybody knows who Litera is. I think largely these invites went out to our customer base, but if you're not familiar, Litera is a software technology company where we've kind of historically focused more on the practice of law, but have moved more into both focusing on the practice and business of law. We are comprised of 4 primary business units: drafting, transaction management, litigation, and firm intelligence. I'd say Jennifer and I fall pretty much in the drafting and transaction spaces at this point, and kind of the technologies we'll be talking about predominantly help in that particular world. We'll bring up this statement here, and I'd say this is largely, this quote here or paragraph of information is kind of a summarization of what we've been hearing from our customer base throughout the year, as well as publications that we read, things like Artificial Lawyer and the like. So as we're constantly communicating with our customers, this theme of always looking for best content, especially as a more junior lawyer coming into a firm, you might not know what is the best content. So you're constantly finding yourself looking through the document management system, other data repositories, probably emailing colleagues, talking to colleagues about where that best content might exist for the particular practice group or documents that you're working on. When we talk to our customers, if they can just kind of generally ballpark the time per user that's lost around this activity, it's largely about an hour a day. So we know our users can be more efficient in finding this best language for the documents and clients that they're working with. Another piece that we continue to hear is kind of this mid-level lawyer, maybe someone in 3 to 6 years of their career, and knows really how to execute these complex transactions and knows where the best content is or what the best content might be for this particular client, is in the shortest supply. So as these junior lawyers are coming on and needing to come up to speed on what is the best content, you also kind of have this bottleneck that is your junior lawyer base, who is so busy they might not have the time to stop and really educate. So how can we augment our professionals with technology to help surface content? So we'll take a look at that from both Kira Solutions as well as our Create product line here in a second on how we're helping solve some of those challenges. Some additional data points we want to kind of just surface here. These we pulled from Artificial Lawyer. They did a nice study with another legal technology vendor a couple months back in September, and this was around what percentage of the work week do you spend on non-billable work. So a couple of the data points that we pulled out of there was 41.2% of lawyers from their pool that they surveyed spent about 35% of their time on non-billable work, some of that relating to, as you'll see here with our additional stats in a moment, around finding content, document assembly, creating that first draft of a document. And in general, 70% of these timekeepers lawyers overall are spending at least 20% of their time on non-billable work. So how can we potentially increase those margins by also augmenting our user base with technology? The other stats we'll take a look at here quickly, and then we'll talk very specifically about the applications and their benefits, or what are these lawyers spending their time on. So again, quoting artificial lawyer here again, but we're extrapolating some additional data that we found in a September publication there. But 85.3% of lawyers spend more than 5 hours per week of drafting documents. I actually just right before this was on a customer call and was with one of the managing partners, and he was just going on and on about the amount of time he spends drafting documents, educating his kind of more junior associates on what his preferences are for best content and precedent content when working with him. Additionally, 79.4% spend greater than 5 hours per week reviewing and proofreading documents and contracts. So you might have the best content, but how do you know that, or you pulled a precedent document or be looking at a prior piece of work product, but how do you know that the content in there is still the most relevant or best depending on the current situation? So we'll look at how Kira and as well as Create can help solve some of these challenges. Before we kind of jump into Kira, Jennifer, anything to add on any of those particular stats or just anecdotal pieces that can add to some of the stories here?
Yeah, sure. That actually just reminded me. I remember being a mid-level associate and working on a deal, being in a partner's office, and they actually couldn't find an indemnification provision that they were looking for in our document management system. So they went over to their bookshelf, grabbed a stack of closing sets about that tall, said this indemnification provision is somewhere in one of these. So I had a fun day that day.
Yeah, so there you go. So a lot of time spent that even on probably a more difficult task manually going through with just a stack of papers trying to find that best content. So the struggle is real. This is a real concern for our customer base. All right, so we'll take a look at Kira. Jennifer, why don't you walk us through what Kira is and why it exists?
Yeah, so for anyone who's not yet familiar with it, Kira is machine learning software that identifies, extracts, and analyzes common clauses, provisions, and data points in agreements and other documents. So things like M&A purchase agreements for knowledge management and identifying trends, and commercial contracts reviewed during due diligence, as well as other use cases. The over 1,200 smart fields that Kira comes with out of the box are trained by our team of subject matter experts on a supervised machine learning platform. So Kira is providing insights that are not derived from traditional rules-based solutions. And then getting into why Kira was built. Kira was built to help organizations gain greater visibility into their contracts and other documents. Our customers use Kira for a variety of use cases. There are use cases relating to M&A due diligence, which is what Kira was originally designed for, where Kira can be used to extract and analyze provisions from a body of contracts. And then pretty early on, we expanded the application into deal terms for M&A and other practice areas like real estate and banking and finance, where Kira can find relevant information to identify market trends and track what's been agreed upon in past deals.
Great. So that's kind of the what and why behind Kira. We'll take a look specifically at the application here in a second and actually take a look at how Kira, as well as our Create applications, have some interactions or interoperability between one another. I'll speak about Create. So what does Litera Create? Litera Create at a high level is a document assembly and content reuse application. So we're actually, for folks on the phone who might be familiar with some of our legacy applications like MacPack, Innova, Forte, those were our document assembly applications. We've been hard at work this year on unifying those into kind of a best of breed first document assembly, helping you create that first draft of a document as quickly as possible. About 2 years ago now, we released an application called Content Companion, Clause Companion, that helped with accessing and storing off best content for quicker reuse. What we're finishing up right now as part of our Q4 release is a Litera Create platform that brings both the document assembly as well as that content storage and reuse capabilities into a single application. Has a multitude of benefits, and we'll get into some of those when we get into the demonstration. So why did we build it? Our customers are looking to create that first draft of documents as fast as possible. That continues to resonate very strongly in the legal market. In parallel to that, users want to be able to access key content, not only their preferred language. So users want to be able to access content and store content off that they, kind of store off in their own personal repositories. They want to be able to share that content. But then a lot of the law firms we work with have big knowledge management teams and precedent banks of language that they want to make more globally available to their user base. Someone's spending a lot of time and energy curating that best set of knowledge to be using when drafting. And so we want to make it more readily accessible during the drafting process. And so that's what Litera Create is helping with. So up first, we're going to take a look at Kira. Let me change presenters to Jennifer, and she'll walk us through the Kira application. You should have it now, Jennifer. Perfect. I see it coming up now.
I'm on mute.
Okay,
so
there you
now
go.
we
Yep,
share a quick
you're good.
overview of how a project might look in Kira. So getting into how Kira works, we're going to see the ways that Kira supports and augments legal work. In each step, lawyers are really working hand in hand with Kira to uncover information that's of interest to them. And through the interface, users can create their projects. You can see over here, add agreements or other documents, determine what provisions or language Kira should review, and then analyze the results that Kira provides, and then use our tagging workflow to easily visualize the data that Kira generates. So getting into our project, here we have our dashboard, which provides an overview and some general statistics on our project. And then we can also create charts and track the overall progress of what's being reviewed. So you can see here that Kira has automatically classified the agreements or documents that we uploaded by type. And then it's also identified the provisions that we're looking for. So for today, we selected some confidentiality related provisions from the Smart Fields library, which houses our built-in Smart Fields, and that's over here in the Worksheets tab. And so that's how Kira is going to know what language to find in your project. And so you can select that from the library here. And then to see what Kira found, we can use our analysis chart tab. And then we can see how many of the agreements or documents had these confidentiality related provisions. So if you're doing this on your own documents, you have a lot more than I have here, but you can see that we can start to generate calculations for the overall prevalence of confidentiality agreement provisions. So things like it's 7 out of the 8 agreements here in this project include confidentiality provisions. And as part of our workflow, you can also kind of hover over it to get a preview of the language. And then you can also click into it to confirm the results that Kira found. And you do that by looking at the original document over on the left-hand side, and then checking the extracted text in the summary chart on the right. So you can see here, we can categorize the more specific language in the provisions, like whether the confidentiality provision includes an obligation to return or destroy the information when the agreement terminates or expires. So we can also use these provision level and document level tags. You can click on them to help calculate the frequencies that certain provisions appear in documents. And that can really help us to understand that, often used term of what's market. So like we saw earlier, we had 7 out of the 8 agreements included confidentiality provisions. And if I click on that tag, like I just did now, then I can calculate that only 1 of those 7 has an obligation to return or destroy the confidential information when the agreement expires or terminates. So with higher volumes of documents, you can always export this information into Excel from this menu here. And then you can run formulas to generate the data that you're looking for and then really start to build a story with it. And then you can also run this through an integration like Matt's going to show you right now with Litera Create.
Yeah, so what you might notice on Jennifer's screen too is we kind of pre-set up a couple folders within here. So you'll see in the background there, it says the project name is webinar demo. So the content right now still resides, and that project still resides in Kira. But if you want to access that Kira content and some of the content that's been extracted as part of the smart field process, that's where we'll now jump over to Content Companion to show that integration of how I can access content that still resides in Kira within Content Companion. I believe I'm sharing my screen now, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna show a couple things here around Litera Create. The first one just being kind of flowing from Kira. Now we had built this project, we uploaded a bunch of documents. It helped kind of break those documents down to help me understand kind of some best language in there. At the clause level, if I want to access some of that key content, I have the ability to do that from within Content Companion. So this is Content Companion here within Word. All I've done prior to sharing my screen was click Show Library. I'll come back to these other buckets, but you can see here from external content perspective, I have two options that I've configured. One for integration within iManage Cloud. So I can access my personal client matter information directly from iManage here within Content Companion. But specifically to the Kira integration, we have an option for Kira. Now it is the listing that I'm seeing here is this smart fields that has broken out at the clause level for me. So if I scroll down here to confidentiality, my confidentiality tags, and then I go to the bottom of this list because we just parsed that particular content, we'll see that confidentiality clause. And again, this is currently, I have access to insert this clause right now into the document on screen, and this content still is at rest in the Kira system. So that's part of the integration component there. The other piece I'll show where we've got a nice integration with Kira systems is if you choose to get content, you can view the different content, the organizational content, two different ways within our pop-up window here. The first one is kind of by that smart fields again. So if you know you use the confidentiality smart field to additionally break down the contracts you uploaded into the Kira system, you can find it here and access those clauses directly from here. We can also look at it at the project level. So in this example here, we had what you saw a second ago on Jennifer's screen, where she had a webinar demo folder or project, and inside that project, the MSA document had several confidentiality clauses broken down, and you can see I can access that directly from this window. Again, all at rest in Kira, but I could add it to my Content Companion library or insert it directly into the document I'm working on here currently on screen. So around, as Kira is helping me break those documents down and get smarter about potential clauses I might want to use, I can quickly access all of that within Content Companion here while drafting a document. I'll show a couple other things around content for Content Companion. I kind of went backwards there. I started with external content. I'll kind of work backwards up the task pane here. So Content Companion, a big ask around content is the ability to share best content with my colleagues directly or with groups of my colleagues. So this particular area can be named however you want. In our environment here at Litera, we have it named by practice group, as that's typically what we see our customers setting it up. And maybe I have been provisioned as a member of the Litera law firm to share content with the finance, marketing, tax, and so on, these particular teams. So I can share content to these folders as well as consume content from these particular folders. The firm clauses area of the task pane here is where we would have deployed precedent content, organized however we see best fit for the law firm, to all users. So anybody that has Content Companion installed has access to this firm best content. I can go in here again and I can either search if I need a moment to search, or I can go ahead and look to find those particular clauses that I might want to use while drafting. But this again is something that I can, maybe my knowledge management team pulled all of this information together, and I want to make it easily accessible for my user base. That is the purpose of this particular section of the task pane. And then the last piece here is my clauses. As a particular drafter, I have my personal favorite clauses that I'm constantly using. I have the ability to create folders and add content to those folders so that next time I come into Word, I can quickly access that content. You can see very similar structure here. Any one of these I could click on and insert into the document while drafting. I also have the ability to share, which I'll just show really quickly. At any point in the application, I have the ability, again, to share to practice groups that I've been provisioned to share with, as well as directly to a user that I've been provisioned to share with. All right, continuing on kind of on this content and helping us surface best content and reuse and share best content, a couple other areas we wanted to highlight in today's demonstration. One piece we added into Content Campaign is this concept of recommendations. I'm gonna go ahead and close this task pane. Just put my cursor in this particular paragraph. So I'm moving into a slightly different workflow here. A second ago, maybe I just parsed a lot of content in Kira and I want to quickly access it while drafting, or I need to access precedent content or content that I've stored up that I'm very confident I want to use. I can just drag that in from my task pane. In this example, maybe I've opened a prior work product and I want to see if there's a potentially more relevant version of a clause that I'm working on in the document. So I can put my cursor in the, the paragraph in question, click recommend, and at the bottom of the screen here, what we're getting is a recommendation for a potentially better version of the clause that's in the document. You'll see in our preview window here, it will show a live track changes view of how this potentially better version of the document differs from what you currently have in the file. And we'll have some metadata visible here. So it's from the Cardinal Health document in 2018. Obviously, if I know I'm very familiar with the Cardinal Health document from 2018, I can just go ahead and insert, and you can see that better version of this particular clause has now been inserted into the document for me. If perhaps I'm not familiar with the Cardinal Health document from 2018 and I need a little bit more information about it, I have two additional options you'll see here on the right. One is I can open the source file. There, it's opening it for me. So it'll open up in a browser view, and it's opening up the full document from where it's recommending that clause from. So if I need to better understand where that clause was used in context to the full document, I can now bring that here up on screen to better understand if this is a good clause for me to use. The other piece here is what we call the more info or the extended view of the application. Should load here in a second. There it is. So what the extended view is taking, as you can see, this is the paragraph. This is the clause that was saying was potentially more relevant. And in Word, you can also see there's 12 other potential more relevant versions. Now, again, if I'm unfamiliar with these particular document names, what I have the ability to do is go into this extended view and start to filter in by client, matter, author, so I can really narrow in the scope of what is considered best content. Obviously, best content's kind of in the eye of the beholder. Might depend on your practice group, who you're working with at that particular time, the partner you might be working with. So a lot of flexibility there. The recommendations piece is newer to our Create product line, but has a lot of power in terms of, again, surfacing and helping us narrow in on potentially better or more relevant versions of a clause. The other piece I wanted to show is around the unified Create product. So this is our Create product here on the far right. And that's going to help me not only quickly generate the first draft of a document, but as well have tighter integration to reusable clauses within the system. I won't walk through this in full depth, but again, around the concept of being able to access either key clauses or full documents to help me create that first draft and then continue drafting as quickly as possible. That is what kind of this future, this Litera Create application that we're soon to launch here at the end of our Q4 release. So I'll walk through this pretty quickly. Here's some documents I have favorited, but again, at a firm-wide level, you could have published a multitude of templates there. They're populating a multitude of templates, standard templates that your users might need access to. I favorited a couple of my favorite starting points within the system. I can go ahead and choose to generate that document. We now have the ability to share and create data sets at both the firm and user level. So to continue to enhance that content experience, we allow you to more quickly fill in information within these standard templates within these documents. So I'll go ahead and choose OK and run through this pretty quick. So it'll go ahead and generate that letter on screen. So now I'm kind of moving out of the singular, I need access to singular clauses. I want to create, I want access to our master services agreement, and I want to be able to create that first draft of my master services agreement as fast as possible. So you can see there, I had quick access to it to generate the full document. And now the application is kind of guiding me through the leftover variable components that I might need to fill in for this particular client and document. And then we've got the integration here to our content library. So once I filled in these variable components, I can click Finish and Show Library, and we'd be right back to where we started with Kira, which is I've got now access to, I can access Kira content, my content, firm-specific content, to quickly add additional clauses that still might be missing from this particular document. The last piece I'll show here, I'll just click Finish to gain access back to my controls here. The last piece I'll show is just around the ability to share. Sharing of content and data is a big ask from our customer base, and that is even more viable with this latest release of our Create application. So from a data perspective, I have data sets that I might have set up to help me more quickly fill in that variable information in a document. So you can see I've stored off particular content that I can immediately apply should I bring up a letter document. But now I have the ability to share this data set. So I've created a data set, also share the data set. People can share data with me, and I can also look at document level data. The other piece I'll show here, kind of just to round out the demonstration, is around managing. And again, we've considerably enhanced this, or the concept of being able to share your preferences and your content was a big ask from our customer base, again, to help give key individuals access to key content and data more quickly. So packets of information, I don't have any set up, but if you needed a grouping of information, I can create that, share it. I have the ability to create my own full documents or templates of documents and share those with my colleagues as well. So a lot of different ways where we're giving users access to both key firm-specific content to insert at the clause level, to continue to accelerate that drafting process, help cut down on the time it's taking to find key content. And then on that initial drafting stage, we've got a lot more robust capabilities around being able to access those core templates from directly within the application, as well as share off not only templates, but data sets and other types of content within the application. All right, I am going to stop or hop out of Word, pop back over to my PowerPoint. And that kind of brings us to the end of what we were hoping to show and discuss today. We'll open it for questions here. I've seen a couple coming in for myself and Jennifer. So if you do have questions for either of us on anything we covered on Create or Kira, now's the time to go ahead and type those into the chat bar. I do see a couple questions that I will just start reading out. All right, so the first one was around how does the Kira integration piece work with Content Companion? So You do need to be a Kira customer for that integration to exist. But if you're a Kira customer, you'd have as part of that solution set an API access token. And then if you're also a Content Companion customer, during the installation process of Content Companion, you will get prompted to integrate with a third party. You'll choose Kira, you'll specify that API access token, and that's it. And then all the content that's available within the Kira system would then be available to you within the system. Another question is just around the recommendations pieces we showed, and how does Content Companion, how is Content Companion getting that content to make recommendations? So the content that's being recommended there is all firm specific, and we work with the firm to understand what is best content to be putting in our recommendations database to then be recommending back to your users. So a lot of times that's going in the document management system or working with a particular practice group to understand what is that key content. Typically, we wouldn't recommend saying, point all of recommendations at your entire document management system. We do want, obviously, those recommendations to be as valuable as possible. I think that's all the questions I've seen come in. That was what we were hoping to cover today. I'd like to thank everybody for attending. If you do think of a question or are curious to see more about either Kira or Litera Create post today's webinar, we encourage you to reach out to whomever your primary contact is at Litera. With that, I hope everybody, if I don't speak to you directly, has a happy holiday and a great new year. Thanks, Jennifer. Great working with you, and we'll see you soon.